like to call to order the meeting of the Lansing Charter Commission for February 18th. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. I know it's been cold out there, so hopefully you'll stay warm. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Adam Simon.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer. Here. Commissioner Boyd. Commissioner Dowd. Here. Commissioner Jeffries.
Here.
Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Cowie. Thank you. Apologize. Councilmember Washington. Commissioner Washington. Sorry.
Good start.
Right.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Motion be in order to adopt the agenda. It's been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed is approved. Motion be in order to approve the February 4th, 2025 minutes. Been moved and support. I would just note at the top of the first page of the minutes, it talks about Tuesday, December 3rd, 2025. It should be Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. If there's no objection, we'll make that change. Hearing none. So for the rest of the minutes, are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, passes or approved. Now it's time for public comment.
All right, our first speaker is Randy Dykes, followed by Olivia Vaden.
Hello, I'm Randy Dykes, 418 North Sycamore Street, proud fourth warder. You have in your packet a document that I emailed to the commission last week. I laid out the reasons why I think it's important to put language in the Charter Commission to create a sustainability department. Since then, I've been asked some questions about the proposal, and I'd like to respond to all of you because you may have similar questions. Is a full department really warranted? Other cities seem to have offices, not departments. Point taken. However, other cities such as Grand Rapids have sustainability offices that are highly placed in city government. The office in Grand Rapids is listed on the same page with all other city departments, indicating the importance of the office. In essence, I think whether it's called an office or a department is a distinction without a difference. Perhaps there is a connotation to department that gives it more weight than an office. Would you also say that the office of the mayor or office of the clerk, both found within the current city charter, are somehow less important because they are not departments? I don't think so. Whatever you call it, it needs high visibility and the authority that comes with being an independent agency. Our charter already has named offices within the executive branch, the aforementioned mayor's office and the clerk's office. So whether you call it an office or a department, it's really not the issue. Second, is there enough work for a department? Short answer, yes. Examples, working with city council to develop an ordinance to incentivize green building practices, both residential and commercial. Moving ahead with materials management that enhances circularity. For example, develop a robust program to remove organics from the solid waste stream. And also developing community solar options that would deliver clean, renewable energy to low-income households. There's no shortage of work. Third, does this belong in the charter? Shouldn't a department like this be created by ordinance? These are two separate questions. First, the charter is all about ensuring that residents have a well-functioning municipal government and all residents are treated in a just and equitable manner. 2025, as we face an onslaught of ecological crises, it's impossible to say that a sustainability department does not work to improve the life of every resident. So it certainly is a charter issue. The second question seems to assume that this isn't a charter issue, so it should be booted over to City Council for consideration. Given my previous comments, I think you can clearly see that it really is a charter issue, and is now in front of you. You are elected representatives just as much as City Council representatives are, and you have the authority to move ahead with the creation of a sustainability agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Olivia Vaden, followed by Tasha Canty.
Hi, Olivia Vaden, proud Southside resident. I'm here to talk about council staff, wards, and BWL. First, city council staff. I think some people think that this shouldn't be a part of the charter conversation, but I do. Our city council members can't be effective without proper support. The city charter should do what they can to reflect an increase of staff support for their work, including policy and research specialists who are specifically designated for the council and not the mayor's office. There's a premier research institution down the road that I think we could find some great talent from. Moving on to a number of wards, this body can set in motion something that would truly change the trajectory of our city and participatory democracy for all of us by eliminating the at-large seats. This isn't a reflection on our current at-large members. I myself am currently up for one of the 2 seats that are going to be on the ballot. But I believe the commission should create a plan to redraw the ward map, increasing the number of city wards, and create a phase-out sunset plan for at-large seats to instill equitable representation for Lansing residents. Finally, BWL, Board of Water and Light should be required to provide more lead time in their notices of rate increases and hearings to discuss those rate increases, and more public engagement should be required before implementing such increases. Many of the people most impacted by those rate increases can't come down to meetings like this because they're busy working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Nothing I'm sharing right now is stuff you haven't heard. I know people have been coming down here month after month to share. But we voted to open up this charter for a reason, because we really want to see change. And I know there are people on this board that believe that change can happen, and I appreciate you for keeping up the work. With great power comes great responsibility, and you all have a great deal of power. And I hope you choose progress moving forward, because the city of Lansing and our residents really, really deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tasha Canty, followed by Nicholas Sandy.
Hi, my name is Tasha Canty. I'm coming down here due to Board of Water and Light bills. I'm on the verge of losing my house. I owe $5,686.80. I have.
Can you move the microphone a little bit closer so I can hear you?
My name is Tasha Canty.
There we go.
And I'm coming down here because I have a mortgage with a balance due of $5,686.80. I've fell behind in my mortgage because I'm a single mother. I have health issues. I had surgery on both of my feet, so I can't stand at jobs anymore, and I'm getting ready to undergo surgery again. And I paid $9,600 this year in Board of Water and Light bills. I went hungry. I'm on the verge of losing my house. The payment plan is ridiculous. The fact that you guys would say that there's a payment plan and you guys expect people to pay the past due amount, the security deposit, and then they break down the past due payment on top of your regular bills. I got $700 Board of Water and Light bills here. I have $800 Board of Water and Light bills here. I have till April to come up with $5,686.80, and there is no funding. So what do I do? That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nicholas Zandy, followed by Linda Keefe.
So, you know who I am. I am Nicholas Zandy. I am the president of the Old Everett Neighborhood Association, and a bit of a big deal here on City TV, considering how many people recognize me. Don't want to make my ego too big, however. Having said that, however, I am here to speak specifically on what is a very serious issue and what is the most important issue for the Charter Commission to be focusing on, and that is ward representation. I'm pretty because I remember I was speaking at a council meeting talking about how the at-large seats have caused too much representation in certain ends of the city, as well as having not enough representation in parts of the city that don't currently have representation. And that's a problem. So that's why the number of wards needs to be increased. And I've actually just sent you an email containing images of 3 maps, and I think you've already received it. So I've shown you what those maps are supposed to look like. They are a 7-ward map, an 8-ward map, and a 9-ward map. And there are several solutions that I want to provide you for those. So either it's 7 wards, 2 at large, 8 wards, 1 at large, or 9 wards, no at large. The latter being the most ideal for adequate representation and less neighborhood division. Because the current ward map divides several neighborhoods, such as Clifford Park, Colonial Village, Lansing Holt, and quite a few others as well that I've probably missed. And so because of that, therefore, there needs to be a redraw of the wards, and there needs to be an increase in the number of wards. And to say that, the at-large seats at-large seats in general have had quite a bit of a history of racism. Now, I'm not going to comment on the current makeup of the at-large seats. What I am saying is that they've had quite a bit of a problematic history, and that needs to be looked into, and that's why they need to be either reduced or eliminated. And also, to sort of point this out, there are several neighborhoods that are, because the wards are so big, it's almost impossible for the council members to adequately represent them. I mean, look at my ward. You've got the Old Everett neighborhood, which is a mix of residential and recreational and commercial. Then you've got the southern part of the second ward, which is pretty much mostly commercial. And then you've got Scott Woods and Sycamore Park, which are mostly residential. And then you've got the Forest View neighborhood, which is mostly recreational. So that is a clear-cut example of why 4 wards is not a good way of representing the city of Lansing. And so thus, it needs to be increased, and also it should be increased to account for maybe new territory that we annex. That's all I'm going to say, and I'll yield the last few seconds of my time.
Thank you. We have Linda Keefe, followed by Deborah Mulcahy.
Good evening. Linda Keefe. I am a former Ingham County Commissioner, and I used to represent part of the east side of Lansing. And over the past at least 3 years, probably even longer, I've been, just on Facebook, reading about people, how they're struggling to pay their Board of Water and Light bills. And the biggest number I heard is what Tasha just said. That's simply outrageous. My concerns are the smart meters. I just don't understand, as well as probably many other people, if everything's the same, you have the same home, the same number of family members, and your bills just start skyrocketing, and the variable that we're aware of are the new smart meters. And I think, and this isn't just happening in Lansing, this is happening all over the country, that people are having issues. The other thing, there are programs throughout the states. 26 states and the District of Columbia have programs called PIPP, that's a percentage of income payment plan, where a person might pay up to 6% of their income for their utilities. And those are funded in various ways. It can be through a meter charge for all the residents, outside funding. LIHEAP, of course, is huge in that. And I see in the on Chapter 2, Board of Water and Light, page 15, number 7, in the best interest of the city, the board and other agencies of the city are encouraged to cooperate on projects deemed to be beneficial and to utilize each other's services. It just seems that now is the time for the city to work with Board of Water and Light. I read an article, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 5, Lansing State Journal, that 1 out of 6 families each year was being shut off. And that's huge. And now things are with the different meters, it's just more of an issue. I have a couple of things. A woman couldn't be here tonight, Tamara Rose. Was that my time?
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I'll talk about that next time then. Thank you.
Next is Deborah Mulcahy, and then our last speaker is Loretta Stanaway.
Good evening, Deborah Mulcahy. Thank you for doing this work that you're doing. I'm sure it's difficult at times and maybe exciting. I hope it's exciting going forward. We have lots of changes going forward. I mean, here I am, the one sitting with paper and pen. You know, most people come up here and they have a phone and read off it. The one thing I don't want you to do is make changes so that we are required to do certain things that might hurt us in the long run. A simple thing would be garbage service, recycling service. Those are all expanding. I don't think they should be in the charter. I was concerned hearing about the ambulance service. I've been around long enough. I remember when the firemen hated to have to be trained as EMTs. They didn't want those responsibilities. I don't think that the city of Lansing should make ambulance service a requirement in the charter that the city provides it. There was comments recently as to investigations in the charter. It's in there, investigations. I think it should be made clearer. But no matter what type of charter we come up with, it's like an ordinance in the same way. We have to be willing to enforce it. Example, MLK. If you didn't know about what was happening in MLK in the last couple of years, then your head was in the sand. The reality of it is the city went forward with that, never speaking to the community residents. City council, from my perspective, should have called the city staff in and somebody's head should have rolled because they did it contrary to practices and procedures. As to the wards, I'm thinking that maybe our community is going to grow, but I don't know. Based on the many issues that we have, I see this a little differently. I do see, as Nick said, 9 wards. I think you have to have an odd number so somebody can break a vote if you have that problem. There are very different needs than when the wards were started, and I'm sure it makes it difficult. I have no objection to most of our at-large members. They've done wonderful jobs. Not all of them, but not all ward people have done wonderful jobs. And we all know that. I like the concept, and I know you guys have poo-pooed it, but I like the concept of us as citizens electing council and council electing the mayor, and then us having a city manager. Apparently you don't like that, but that would be my preference. Community input. The residents are here. Without the residents, what do you have? The city's already felt the impact of that. Going downtown, I have lots of neighbors who will never even deal with those parking lots. You have to be not focusing, or a person focusing on our development, which needs to be balanced, but on the citizen community needs. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Loretta Stanaway.
Okay, some of my concerns have been touched on already tonight. My biggest concerns, my 2 biggest frustrations with this whole charter commission process are, first, that I honestly believe there are far too many on the commission, not all, but too many, who do not grasp the intent of the public. There's been some talk about the rhetoric, the language of what the actual vote was. Let me tell you, I'm in touch with over 1,000 people on Facebook. I get comments from people in the public all the time. I go into Target or whatever and somebody stops me and says blah, blah, blah. The people voted to have a charter commission because they want significant change. The 2 largest issues are city manager, mayor, and the second one is wards at large. You guys have fluffed over the concerns of the public, in my view, on the city manager and mayor issues. I have not seen you come up with a pro-con list where you've evaluated and deliberated intensely on the differences and the values and the cons of each of those issues. You just kind of decided, oh, well, you know, it's going to save us time if we make a decision now because everything else follows that. We didn't put you there to save time. You've got 3 years. We put you there to do our will which is to have significant change. Secondly, let me get to my notes here. I think there has been some dereliction of duty, honestly. There's been no deliberation on some issues. The fire department, and if any of you know me, you know I am pro-fire, pro-police, 100%. But a firefighter came up here representing the union and suggested you put something in the charter, and you blankly agreed to do it without any deliberation on it whatsoever. You don't know that starting last April, I've been meeting with the chief, talking about implementing a possibility of going to medical taxis. 60% of the firefighter runs are basically medical taxi runs, taking our skilled workers and our skilled equipment away from significant needs to go run somebody that stubbed their toe to the hospital. There are possibilities of that being implemented. You put in the charter this 4303.5 stipulating that the LPD and LFD, I should say LFD, has to provide all the ambulance services. You've shot that in the butt before it ever got a start. You didn't even think about what you might be hindering by adopting that amendment. You need to think. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Under officer reports, just very briefly, in terms of our meeting schedule, our next meeting after tonight will be March 4th. Contemplating scheduling a meeting for a week after that on March 11th. At that meeting, we'll be focusing on the Board of Water and Light language in the charter, as well as the Department of Sustainability. Those will be two things that we'll talk about. Hopefully, we'll get to other issues and other language to go over. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If that poses a problem, please let me know. I know it's kind of last minute, but we'll see if we can make that work. Commissioner Bauer.
I'm sorry, the BWL and what else?
Office of State, or the Department of Sustainability. That would be Tuesday, March 11th. Anybody else? Okay. That's all I have for my report. Madam Vice Chair.
No report.
Mr. Clerk.
A couple items here. We do have the written communications that we've received in the last 2 weeks as part of the packet, and giving your monthly update on your budget. The Charter Commission has spent $171,421. And so remaining from the current budget is $328,578. And then last, understand that our Facebook stream is not working this evening, but we have put a link to the YouTube. So if you are looking for that on Facebook, there's a link right there at the top that will just been posted that takes you right to our YouTube stream, so they can follow the meeting. That concludes the clerk's report.
Thank you. We'll move into old business. First item that we're going to take up is the council makeup. Recognize Commissioner Kui for a motion. Council makeup.
I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the number of council members from 8 to 7 with a 4-3 split.
And the four would be?
The 4 would be 4 wards, 3 at large. And my reasoning is, again, and we've heard what a lot of the citizens have said, but we do have a very robust at-large members that do a lot for our community all over the city of Lansing. That's my take on it.
It's been moved and supported. Comments, questions? Councilmember Washington.
To me, this is the absolute worst vote we could be taking. Not only are you reducing the amount of wards, and this, I know it came from Liz Boyd. I heard her talk about this some months ago. You're already hearing, no, stop,
Council-
Ryan. I'm
Councilmember
so
Washington,
tired of you
I'm
gaveling me.
going to ask you.
How about
please,
you
let's
start
not-
gaveling other inappropriate comments?
I will.
Okay?
Yeah.
Quit
I would ask that you
gaveling
not-
me every time I talk.
All right. I would ask that you not single out individuals and go.
Well, and I would ask that some not single out residents when they speak.
Fine.
All right?
Fine, yep.
I'm tired of you gaveling me every time I have something different to say.
That's
So what I'm going to
essentially-
say is this, that it takes into no account of equal representation. It is not the people that are at large. People keep saying, oh, it's not the position, it's the person. It's not the person, it's the position. We have vast areas in this city that are not being represented equally. You all want to talk about DEI and equality and representation, and we come forward with something like this? You've got to be kidding me. I am horrified that this has even come to the table. I am horrified that everybody says they believe in equal representation. I am thoroughly disgusted, and I will be a no vote.
I would also not be supporting this. I feel like we have heard a lot of input from our constituents about wanting more representation, wanting more wards, wanting more council seats. And I just think that this is going in the opposite direction. From my recollection, I've maybe heard 1 to 3 people speak against increasing the number of wards, where most have been in support of increasing the number of wards. And I think that we should really take that into consideration, and it just seems like putting this forward is doing the opposite.
Other comments? Are there other comments? Commissioner
Can I hear
Dow,
both?
And then Commissioner Cui.
Oh, you had someone else?
Yeah, Commissioner Dow.
Yeah, I would support that, or I would not support that, I should say. I think we need to look at more wards, not keeping the same. I think that's by and large everything we've heard. I'm certainly not in support of just keeping the 4 and reducing the number. That would not be my vote at all.
Okay. Commissioner Cui?
And I respect everybody up here. First of all, just to point to you, Commissioner Washington, that was my own personal thing that had nothing to do with her. So I went to see that before. You might have heard that from her, but again, we have not spoken. This is just my personal thing. And I said this once before, if you look back at our time, and I know people want us to grow, but we are not growing. If you look at our numbers, we are slowly shrinking. Until we have a substantial amount of citizens that we grow, I just don't see. And I think also it should be an odd number on city council so we have someone to make that tiebreaker. So that is my own personal, again, you have the choice to vote it down, but I'm giving you my rationale or reasoning. So, and I also respectfully have heard a lot of our ward members that to me have downgraded and disrespected our at-large members. And they do work. We have one sitting out there. And for people to say that they don't do is really, to me, is a slap in the face. They have represented their whole city well to me. Again, this is my own personal thing. You have your personal response to that.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, I am not in favor of that proposal, but I do believe the wards should be increased, but I'm not in favor of eliminating the at-large positions.
Other comments? Commissioner Washington?
And I will say this, because this body voted to basically never have this charter looked at again, you have to consider what's going to be here in 50 years. And we will not be at 113,000 people. You put it in the charter that we have 4 wards, 3 at large, that's what you've got, because it's in the charter, and the charter will not be looked at again without a public initiative or 3/4 of council. So basically, you're saying it won't happen. So you've got to stop looking at today. We're looking for the future. And I'm sorry that everybody has such a depressed view of our city. I see it growing.
Any other comments?
I think it needs to be made clear, we have voted on certain items of this charter, but nothing is concrete as of yet. Anything can be revisited. I myself have expressed that I wanted to revisit some subjects after thinking about it carefully. So to say that, this charter won't be open, that's not necessarily true, because anything in this charter until the end can be revisited as we gain more knowledge.
Other comments? Commissioner Anderson.
I would just like to add in reference to population growth. I think as someone working in the economic development space and watching the active intentions of trying to grow literally our economy, right? So the number of jobs, the amount of people here, and not just in Lansing, but as a state as a whole. I think that we can't think about the fact that, we can think about it, but I don't want to make this decision based off of the fact that our population has slowly been decreasing when there's so many initiatives and work being put into increasing the number of people here. And I think that even with the number of people we have today, we still have a substantial amount of people not feeling represented, not feeling heard, not feeling supported. And so I just want to bring that to light, that in addition to looking at what our future has, we also want to be mindful of the people who are here today, who are literally coming here every other Tuesday or emailing us or having side conversations saying, I don't feel heard, I don't feel seen, I don't feel supported, and that's really what we should make this decision on.
Commissioner Bauer.
I thought, obviously, like all of us, a lot about this issue. And I've been pretty steadfast in my opinion that we need the balance of ward and at large. I think that it has worked. I think that the people of Lansing now have the ability, and I think this as a voter myself, I vote for my ward council person, and then I get 4 other votes. I get a chance to shape the future of our city by voting for 4 other people. And to me, that's important. So that's one piece of it. And then as, during the work of the city and the council, again, citizens, if they can't get support, action from their ward council person, they have 4 other people, and they could go to other ward people too, I suppose, but they also have 4 at large who are representing all of them. So I think it is an important balance. I worry if we had all wards that as we get into issues even like budgeting, trying to make decisions overall for the good of the city, I think there's an important balance, just like the Senate and the House at the federal level. So I continue to think that that's important. And I think that we're lucky. We've had really good ward people over the years, many of them, that work for their wards. Their number one interest is the ward. The balance is, at large, members are supposed to represent the entire city and keep that in mind, the growth of the city. So I continue, I know, there are people who don't agree with that, but I've thought a lot about it, and I hear from quite a few people who think the current balance of ward at large is important for the city of Lansing.
Other comments? Commissioner Washington.
And I'm going to say again, the at-large positions are bought by big money. Not an everyday person can spend $35,000 to $50,000 to get a seat, which is what's being spent now with all of the free literature, the free advertising, the donations, which aren't so many. But if you're getting 6 lit pieces for one person, you know what it cost us to put out 1. So nobody can afford that. So these are going to the big money donors, and I have a problem. And I'm not the only one. We see it in state and federal government too. Money is polluting our politics. I don't know that I would necessarily be against 1 or 2 at large, but I will never support 4.
Madam Vice Chair.
There's been a lot of conversation around special interest group. I'm speaking from someone who has never been endorsed by a special interest group. Everyone on this dais, except for me and Commissioner Anderson, in their political career has been endorsed by a special interest group. My question would be, when does a special interest group endorsement become bad? When they don't endorse you, or you lose, or both? And just to speak on that, what prevents special interest groups from entering a ward race? Say you have 9 wards. They still can endorse a candidate. For example, I'm going to get a little history on you. In 2019, Commissioner Washington was endorsed by the chamber. Hussein, 3rd Ward, was endorsed by the chamber, okay? In 2021, Garza's 2nd Ward was endorsed by the chamber. Caldwell was endorsed 4th Ward, but he lost to Jackson. In 2023, Hussein was 3rd Ward and Cost was 1st Ward. That was also endorsed by the chamber. So how are we drawing this line? Why are we bringing the special interest group? All of us ran at large for 9 seats. There were 36 people. Each one of us ran against 35 other people, giving us about a 25% chance to win the seat. I wasn't endorsed. You weren't endorsed. Neither was Commissioner Anderson. But we are all sitting here today. So I think the argument about special interest, yes. Do they have influence? Do they have power? Yes. But when it comes down to it, it comes down to the electorate voting. The special interest groups never has told anyone not to vote. 12.5% of people came out to vote for our special election. So whose fault is that? And I'm not defending because they've never endorsed me. So I don't have a skin in the game. But I just find it very hard that people that have been endorsed by special interests, one way or other in their political career. Now, and this is not a personal situation, but Commissioner Washington, you were on the ballot for at-large in 2023. So how has your position changed? And that might be a rhetorical question, I don't know. But I'm just trying to understand the logic behind the sentiment, well, we shouldn't have any at-large, because I think when you don't have at-large, you reduce the focus on citywide, and also when you do, say we have 9 wards, what prevents those people who are drawing those districts up from gerrymandering? And when you have less representation, there's no guarantee that by having 9 wards that you're going to increase representation. You may lose representation, and you may lose quality of candidates in that smaller pool. And to be quite honest, not having at-large actually is an advantage to the mayor, to be quite honest, if you've done any research on that. And that's all I'll say about that.
All right. Other comments? Councilmember Washington, or Commissioner Washington.
So since this became personal about me, I did not ask for Chamber's endorsement for this charter commission because I don't think that big money should be involved in it. I did not raise a dime. I did not spend a dime. There are other people, and I got it on name identity, let's be honest, but there are other people here that got elected with chamber endorsement because the lit pieces were at the doorsteps. People didn't know who most of you were. They just voted for who they saw. Now, my point with the at-large, I said I could maybe stomach 1 or 2, but if you have smaller wards, which is how I won my first race, and I did not ask for chamber's endorsement in my first race, I was able to knock every door in my ward 3 times. You can't do that at large. So I did beat the big money, only because it was smaller and I could do it. So there is so much more into it. I've been there, I've done it, I've worked with at-large, I've watched former council members here that were at-large. I'm telling you, we need to lessen them.
And this is my last comment about this. Commissioner Washington, I was not personally attacking you. I was just fact-checking. Simply as that. But also, and I will say that because once again, I like to do a little research. Even though the chamber endorsed 6 people sitting here, the range of the votes ranged from 6,217 to 2,760. So the influence obviously wasn't there because the chamber doesn't necessarily resonate with the average voting citizen.
All right. Other comments? Councilmember Bauer, or Commissioner Bauer, and then Commissioner.
One thing I'd like to clarify, mainly for the public, because I think everybody up here probably has the same experience I've had with an endorsement by the chamber and labor, as we're all talking about this. I have not been contacted one time by anybody from labor or the chamber. I really have no idea what they think about wards versus at large size. I have not heard, so they are, they are not using their influence in this election to impact the outcome. I mean, unless, and maybe I'm the only one they haven't called, but I have not had any call.
Commissioner Boyd.
I just want to say that I was born and raised in Lansing, other than have lived here my whole life and choose to live here, other than when I was at Michigan State University and lived in East Lansing for a few years. I, too, decided to run for the Charter Commission because I had the time and I wanted to give back to the community. I did not ask for the chamber's support or labor support. It came to me. I was grateful for it, but I did not ask for it. And like Commissioner Bauer, I've not been contacted by them. I have no idea how they feel about any of this. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Andrews.
I just have a question. Can I make an amendment to the motion, or I can't because I didn't make the motion? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, you can make it.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I have to accept it.
I know. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion of 7 wards, 2 at large.
I agree with that.
7 wards, 2 at large.
Point of clarification. People.
9 council people, correct.
It's been a motion, or the amendment has been, right. I'm sorry. You do not accept.
I don't accept that amendment from my.
Okay, okay. All right, any other questions on this? All right, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please. The 4-3,
That's where the motion is for 4 wards and 3 at large?
correct.
Just make sure everyone's, all right, and start,
Okay. Commissioner Lopez.
Do we need to vote on the amendment to the motion first?
No, it was not accepted.
It was made and seconded?
No.
Oh, it wasn't seconded, okay. Okay,
Okay.
so we're still with the same motion?
Yep.
Okay.
Roll call.
all right, so for,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would like to make an amendment to Commissioner Kui's motion that we do 5 wards and 2 at large. Making 7.
I think I'm going to call the question because we're not getting any movement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
You can
call the question on the motion.
The question's been called, it's non-debatable. I think it requires a 2/3 vote.
right, so we're doing a vote on the call to question? First?
Yeah,
Call the question, vote.
yes.
Okay, so I'm starting to roll call now. Or do you want to call the question?
The-
Take a motion first on call the
The
question?
call of the question is a motion, and so it requires, it cannot be debated, has to be voted on, requires 2/3 vote.
Correct, so you will, so you can call all in favor?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, let's do a roll call, so we get the correct number.
This is a roll call on the call to question.
Correct.
All right, so Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Bauer.
No.
Commissioner Boyd. This is on to call to question on whether we are
Stop
ending
debate.
debate.
End the debate.
This is a question of vote on ending debate. No. Okay. Councilmember Dowd. No. Commissioner Jeffries.
No.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Kawi.
Kui.
Kawi. Commissioner Washington.
Yes.
So I don't get a vote?
No, you're up top. That Commissioner Adam Simon.
No.
All right, call the question, motion has failed.
So we're back on the question. Roll call?
This is the 4-3.
Yes.
So this is on the,
We're on the 4-3. No. No. The motion before the body is on the 4-3, main motion. Roll call, please.
okay.
Again, and I have my own personal beliefs on my motion. You vote how you want to vote. And I'm just talking to every member we have here. We are here to work as a team. All of us are not going to agree. And also, if that motion fails, you can also have something else to put up. Anyone could put another motion on the board.
Okay,
Thank you.
please. Call the
Okay, Commissioner Bauer,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Dowd, Commissioner Jeffries,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
No.
Commissioners Cowie,
Yes.
Kawhi, Commissioner Washington, Commissioner Adam Simon,
No.
Commissioner Anderson.
No.
The motion fails 4-5.
Commissioner Anderson.
I'd like to put forth a motion to have 7 at-large, 7 wards, 2 at-large, 9 council in total. Seven wards, 2 at-large, 9 council in total.
I will second that.
I just want to say for the record that I will not support going to 9 people on the city council. I have talked to past and present city council members. I think we need to right-size the council. So while I'm open to changes in the makeup of a 7-member council, I will support 7 members. I will not be supporting 9.
I just would like to ask, I guess, for more explanation as to what right-sizing means to you and the people that you've spoken to, and why the belief is that 7 council people would be better than 8 or 9.
You don't want to hear all that I have to say about every council person I've talked to, but I've talked to everybody from Carol Wood to Patricia Spitzley to Tim Kaltenbach to other council people. I've talked to past and present mayors. I've talked to Virg Bonero. I've talked to Dave Hollister. I've talked to citizens. Yes, we've had people come down and speak about 9 people on the council and 9 wards, but we've also had people come down and talk about support for at-large because they appreciate having the ability to contact an at-large council person. So I have talked to a number of people. I have asked people point blank, do you have a problem? Is it a problem to represent the wards as they are? Do you have trouble getting in touch with your constituents? And to a person, I heard no. Now, I heard our current council president come down and speak that, he thinks the wards are too big. I have talked to people, and I'm not hearing that. And I have, I'm one vote. I'm one vote. And I supported the 4-3. And I have asked my neighbors, I've asked people that I've talked to, I've run into, who are city residents, how do you feel about the council? Do you think it should be larger? Do you support 4-3? If not 4-3, what would you support? And to a person, they all support 4-3, and that's why I support 4-3. And I realize that I'm one person and one vote, so I really don't care. But that is what I can tell you.
Commissioner Anderson.
I'm sorry. I'm just, because we're having debate and I'm just looking for clarification. Thank you for saying who all you've spoken to. I'm asking specifically, so people have said their reasoning for wanting more city council is for more representation, right? So like that is the reason. And so I'm asking what the actual reason is for 7 council, just so I can understand where you're coming from or where people are coming from.
I agree with some of what I've heard here tonight, that our city is smaller than it was in 1978. I agree that we should have an odd number of council people, even though the council people that I talked to said it was never a problem to have an even number, that they, other than the latest vote on the city hall, that they don't ever recall a problem when there was an even numbered vote. But I think there should be an odd number, because I just think that makes perfect sense. Especially in terms of how we talk about it in the charter, the 2/3 vote, et cetera. You can't have a 2/3 vote with the number of council people that we have. So I think 7 members makes sense. And I realize we're building all kinds of affordable housing, and I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that our city does grow. But it would go against the grain. I don't think that's where cities are today. I don't think they're growing. I think people like to live out in the outskirts. And so in 1978, we had 133,000 people. Today we have 113,000 people. And I believe in my heart that when the next census happens, that 113,000 will be smaller than it is today. I hope not.
Other comments?
I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be.
Commissioner Duff.
So I just want to explain a little what my thought on this with expansion, and I appreciate you talking about people you've talked to, and I think it's interesting to think that if a majority of our council members have said this is fine and they can reach their constituents, we're hearing from the constituents that they can't reach their members. So that's the problem to me, right? So our citizens are telling us we're not getting representation, or parts of our city are not being represented. The council person could tell you, yes, I'm doing a good job, but the citizens are the ones that are coming here to tell us that that's not truly what's happening. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about an elected person telling me they're doing a good job. I'm concerned about everybody sitting out here telling us that it's not working. So I think there is a need to look at expanding that, to increasing the wards, keeping, like, I'm with you, a couple of at-large at most, but I think we need to think about how we set this up for the future. And even if we don't grow, it's not working right now, and that's exactly what everybody is coming here and telling us. This is not working.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, what you're saying is correct, because people are saying that they're not being representative. But if you had 9 wards, they still might not be represented. It's the person in the seat. It has nothing to do with how many wards there are. We have some very good council people, I agree, but there's people that don't show up. So how do we guarantee that by having 9 wards? Or I believe increasing wards. I'm a firm believer in that. Having additional wards, you're saying some areas are overrepresented. Right now, once again, facts checking. There are 4 council people who are in the wards. We have 4 at-large members. Each at-large member lives in one of the wards. So you have 2 council people in each ward. So that is not over-representation. I think people need to kind of really figure out what's going on and not make assumptions about things. There is no guarantee. And when you talk about representation, what type of representation you're talking about? Diverse representation, quality, but there's no guarantee for that either. There's no guarantee. And when you talk about increasing ward, are you looking at kind of like precinct captains for you want specific neighborhoods to be represented? Because there's no guarantee that a specific neighborhood is going to be represented, or a socioeconomic situation. You're going to have a different socioeconomics involved in here. So we don't know. We don't know the future. We don't know what's guaranteed. But we have to look at this in a very equitable manner. I don't believe we should increase the number of council seats, but I do think we do need to increase the ward, and my proposal is different, so I'll talk about that later.
Commissioner Cui. No, you're done. Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, I respect that. I think that when I look at all the changes that we're making in the charter, none of them are guaranteed solutions to the issues that we're having today. But to me, they're a form of harm reduction, right? They're an effort to mitigate the issues that we're having today. There's no guarantee that we'll elect great people in these seats. There's no guarantee that they'll be responsive. There's no guarantee of any of it. But it's an effort to do right by the constituents who are saying that there's an issue today. And so I think that's where I'm coming from. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
And just one clarification point, no matter, if we're going to expand, I think it's important, and we had some folks send us maps of that. That is not what this charter will do. So we will be laying out the rules for the city, and then that goes into the hands of the city to divide those areas that we have no control. And I want to make sure that's just clear, right? We're not going to have any control if we say we go to 5 wards, 7 wards, 9 wards. We don't draw those maps. We don't decide what that looks like. That is simply, we just make the law, and the city figures that out. So I just want to caution us with that and make sure the public is aware that that is not on our purview at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Washington.
Thank you. And I will go back to the time when I was on council, that one fourth ward member was the ward council, and 3 of our at-large were in the fourth ward. And I'm not sure who the at-large in the first ward is right now. I don't think we have one. Who's that?
I think it's Mr. Brown.
No, he's not in the first ward. He was in the second ward, and now he's downtown. But having said that, he's not in the first ward, never was. And my thing is this, I'm glad people have talked to whoever they've talked to. I haven't seen anybody except 1 or 2 people at any neighborhood meeting, any community meeting. I'm everywhere. I am literally everywhere. I haven't seen any of you there. And so I don't know who these mystery people are you're talking to. Not really interested, frankly, what council members that were in 20 years ago have to say. Times have changed. I don't know who the council member you talked to, unless it was yours, about everything's just fine. Because I have close relationships with 3 of them. I don't know where you're getting this information, and at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. We are not listening to the people. We didn't listen about city manager. We haven't listened about ward representation. We're probably not going to do anything about city attorney. I mean, these were big issues, and they did elect us to make change, not just to read it, not to take a peek. Y'all, we're wasting $500,000 here. $500,000. And I frankly don't see a whole lot of seriousness. And I don't frankly care, but I'm trying to represent the people. And to me, that's important. I don't see how lessening the number of council people helps, but I would support 7 wards, or 7 or 9 wards, or 2 at large. 7 wards, 2 at large.
Commissioner Lopez and then Commissioner Boyd.
So the motion is 7-2?
We don't have a motion.
No, she does. She does. We have a motion, 7-2.
Oh, wait.
Okay. I would prefer 5-4, but, we'll see what the vote says. All this discussion, really, it depends on the voters. It doesn't matter what we come up with. If the voters want to vote for 3 people in the same ward, they're going to vote for them because their message is good. If that's, each candidate does their work. So, and I'll go back to what Commissioner Washington said. We're doing this for the future, not for now. So, in the future, for example, we had 7, if we had 5-2, for example, going to 7, 5-2. And if this city grew, council could amend the charter and add 1 or 2 more.
Right.
The council could. They could amend the charter at any time. So I don't know that they would amend it lesser than whatever is there, but let's say we went to a 5-2. Council could eventually, if the city grew, in a good way, that the council could approve. Right now, I'm not really opposed to 7-2, but I do think that, again, the at-large and the ward council members, who's working, which ward has really good representation. You know that. You know that some wards don't have good representation. you know which at-large council members are doing good work and those who are not, or maybe they're not as obvious as we think they should be. But, you know, at-large folks, maybe they have other ways of bringing stuff to the table. Maybe it's in grants, maybe it's in their own ability to find other resources for the city. So, because they don't have a ward. Now, I see at-large people go to, at-large council people go to meetings. I see them here and there. I'm not keeping track, but I do see them. So, you know, Mr. Brown goes to the South Side Community Center all the time. All the time that I've been there, he does. He's an at-large person. I'm not judging him either way. I'm just saying he's there. So the same thing with our third ward, the commissioner. He works very hard, and he also helps other wards. So I mean, you know, it's just the work that each commissioner wants to put in. One of the things that may help is if we go to per diem, that commissioners may choose to go to the meetings more so than not. But at this point, again, you know, I'm not opposed to 7-2. I would prefer 5-4, but we'll see where this leads us.
Is there any other discussion or debate?
So you're done.
Hearing none, then on the motion, I'm sorry.
You want 9
Commissioner.
people.
Okay. 7, it's overall 9, 7 ward, 2 at large. Roll call, please.
Okay. Commissioner Boyd,
No.
Commissioner Dowd. Yes. Commissioner Jeffries,
No.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yep.
Commissioner Coe,
No.
Commissioner Washington.
Yes.
Commissioner Adam Simon,
No.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bauer.
No.
Fails on a 5-4 vote. Next motion. Commissioner Bauer.
Is there any problem if we split the question? I mean, if I would move that we have a 9-member city council to start with, or do you?
What are you talking
I-
So at least we-
If you want,
Are you asking a motion?
So I move that we have a 9-member city council so that we at least can get the size question, because I think there's really 2 very different issues here. One is the size of the city council, and one is the composition. And if you don't want to split, then vote no on my motion.
Second.
been moved and supported. Any debate? Let's have a roll call vote again, please. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make a clarification. So you do not want to label if they're going to be at-large or wards. Your proposal or motion is just to have 9 council members.
Well, I better clarify that.
Yeah, because that's what I'm
Maybe I better-
hearing. That's why I wanted
maybe
to point of clarification.
What I was hearing.
What my intention would be, and if it's too confusing, then I'll withdraw my motion, would be that we first would vote on the size of the council that we think is, because there's a lot of, I hear 2 different arguments, or 2 different questions here. And then the second motion would have to be, what is the composition? That's what I would propose, so that we can at least settle the first one. That makes a big difference, I think, for some of us on the composition.
Okay, on that, Commissioner Deb.
I like it, but I only support it if the number of at-large represent what I want it to be. I support 9, but I don't want 4 at-large. So I understand. I would hate to say, yes, I support that, and then we get down the road and that doesn't matter, because now we end up with
The risk you run.
right. So I don't know that okay.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm going to withdraw my motion. I just think it's sounding like it's going to confuse. I was hoping it would make the issue clearer.
Chair.
What? Oh, you want? Sorry about this.
Commissioner Anderson.
I'll make another motion. 6 at large. I mean, why do I keep doing this? I'm so sorry that I'm stressing everyone out. 6 wards, 2 at large, 8 in total. And I know that we said that we want an odd number, but I kind of feel like this might be meeting in the middle. I don't know. So I'm just putting that out there.
There's a. It's been moved and supported. 6, total of 8, 6 ward, 2 at large. Any debate, discussion, Councilmember White?
Well, apparently people have been saying that there's no problem with the 4-4 vote and that that doesn't seem to be an issue. So I think this is probably something I could support. The public hasn't said anything about it. We have a commissioner that has said that nobody seems to have a problem with it. So I think I could support that.
Commissioner Boyd.
So I guess I bring the question is, what happens when you have a tie? Because we've heard, again, from our constituents, a majority, nobody wanted the mayor to have the say-so for that tie break-off. And we did not put that in there. That was our whole main focus on having a odd number so that we could get away from that. Because right now, currently as it is, there is no tiebreaker. And we did not want to make the mayor have that authority of being the tiebreaker on there. So I do believe we do want it to have an odd number. Again, this is just me speaking, that we wanted to have that in its place so that we don't have to run into that situation.
Commissioner Anderson.
So I think we're at a crossroads. I think that reducing the number of city council is also not listening to constituents. So if we're going to 7, we're also just acknowledging the tie vote situation and not ensuring that people have more representation. So I guess what I'm proposing is, at a minimum, we still have 8 city council people, and 6 are for wards and 2 are at large. So.
Okay, is there any other, Commissioner Washington?
And I just want to clarify this, that when there are 4-4 votes, the mayor has never been a tiebreaker, nor will he ever be a tiebreaker, nor will the city clerk ever be a tiebreaker. They were not elected. But what does happen is that council renegotiates. They do like what we're doing. And they negotiate, and they should be able to. And they talk, and they debate, and they bring the vote back up. And it takes a lot of work, but I'm not certain that that process can't work.
Okay, on the motion, we have a roll call, please.
So this is on the motion for 6 ward and 2 at large. And we'll start with Commissioner Dowd.
Yes.
Commissioner Jeffries.
No.
Commissioner Lopez.
6-3?
No, 6-2.
6-2?
8 total.
No.
Commissioner Coe.
No.
Commissioner Washington.
Yes.
Commissioner Adam Simon.
No.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bauer.
No.
Commissioner Boyd.
No.
It's on a 6-3.
Motion fails.
You have a motion?
Yes. I would like to put forth the motion that we create 5 wards and 2 at large.
I will support that.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on this one? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Who second?
I did.
Okay, just make sure we have that. All right. Commissioner Jeffries.
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Coe.
Sorry, yes.
Commissioner Washington.
No.
Commissioner Adam Simon.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
No.
Commissioner Bauer.
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd.
Yes.
Commissioner Dowd.
It passed.
5 wards, 2 at large.
7-2. Okay, I guess we would ask our attorney then to, if you could review the charter and start making the changes that would be required. I think they're fairly extensive, and we'd appreciate that. And hopefully we'll have it at our next meeting. Commissioner Cooley? Okay. Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Okay. We'll take a recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. You're being called. Okay, the committee will come back to order. The first part of the business we'll take up, there is a correspondence dated February 14th regarding Article 2, Section 2-104. This deals with the per diem pay issue that we've had some discussion about. I would turn this over to you, Kristen, if you want to go through your notes.
So I was requested to develop some language to amend the compensation of officers section to provide for part of city council's payment to be a per diem, which is to say they get paid for a certain set amount of money per meeting that they show up. The model that I was asked to, I guess, primarily look at was what is being done in Ingham County with their County Board of Commissioners, which was established in a resolution by that county. So first of all, we did some legal review as to can you and what are legal potential pitfalls, or do we have any issues? Generally speaking, we see no reason why you can't amend this to look something similar to, or a concept similar to what Ingham County is doing with their Board of Commissioner pay. But there's sort of some structural, I guess, questions and decisions, and in the drafting of this, we've kind of made some recommendations in our drafting, and so if you don't like those, let us know, we can redraft. But first of all, there are other cities that have established in their charter that their commission gets paid per diem and that's it. So however many, meetings that they are scheduled to show up to, they show up and they get paid X amount of dollars, and that can range from $5 to $60. And then, so typically there are, when it's done that way in a charter, the amount of the per diem is set, and then there's a cap on the amount of money per year that a commissioner or a council member could be paid. A lot of those provisions tend to be older, and they predate a change to the Home Rule Cities Act, which provides for a local officer compensation commission. So the way the Home Rule City Act is worded is the city charter has to establish the pay for its elected officers, but you can establish through ordinance that the process or the actual compensation can be established through or by the work of a local officer compensation commission. So what this wording does is a hybrid of both. So it's stating in the charter that city council is going to be based, pay is going to be based on an annual base salary, so some base amount of dollars for doing work outside of meetings, and a per diem payment for each officially called standing committee, board, and council meeting for which the member, for which the official is a member, up to a maximum of a certain amount of meetings. Here I put in 130, but that is absolutely up to debate and consideration for you all. Provided, however, that the council member should not be entitled to more than one per diem per day, regardless of the number of meetings attended. The idea being, if they have 2 scheduled meetings, you're only going to get paid for one of those meetings. But then this leaves it to the elected officers' compensation commission to actually establish what that annual base salary is and what the per diem rate is, but also give some guidance to the LOCC that the per diem, total per diem per year is a significant portion of what that council member's pay would be. And here, it's suggested 25% of the total annual compensation. That's totally up to you as to what it is. Consider some of these numbers to be placeholders as to get you started on this conversation. But this isn't the only place we need to consider it. We also developed some language for compensation of officers. The Article 9 is a continuity article about, okay, if this charter goes into effect and is approved, there are certain provisions within Article 9 about how this now becomes enacted and how do you affect these changes. And so we added some additional language to 902 to account for that for city council members, and for giving direction to its EOCC is how Lansing terms its compensation committee, giving them direction as to when they're going to consider doing the work to establish what the per diem number would be and whatever other work they would need to set this in place. And also to clarify, because I think this was the intent, and if not, you can certainly tell me otherwise, that the previous annual salary of members of city council shall not serve as a base salary. So what the city council member are making now is approximately $29,000 a year. It's my understanding that the intent of development of this language is not to start at 29 and then add some additional 25% beyond that. It's to kind of jumble it all up and develop, okay, well, maybe what's 25 or whatever percentage you decide on, of this 29,000 whole, how much is going to be a base salary, how much is going to be a per diem. Now, we did not say that it can't go beyond 29,000, because I think based on additional things you may consider that it may be appropriate to increase a salary overall, for example, of cost of living. So we tried to draft this in a way that tried to convey to the LOCC that the intent of this provision was not to start at 29,000 and then go up automatically, but also not tie their hands to, say, limit a cost of living increase or something like that. The other provision, again, trying to think through what potential issues could arise in implementing this, particularly in the first instance if it's approved, is if you understand the process of how the LOCC, or in Lansing it's called the Elected Officers Compensation Commission, works. The Elected Officers Compensation Commission essentially establishes the salary of the elected officers, but it's up to the commission to approve it, and the commission can actually reject it. And in which case, if the council rejects the number, then the prior number stays their salary. So our intent was to draft language here to prevent that, because what we don't want is we don't want the charter to say you're going to have a base plus a per diem, the LOCC sets it, and then it comes to the commissioner or the council who would set their own or approve their own salary and say, nah, we're okay, we'll do the base salary. So this actually puts a limit on there to say the first go around when the LOCC, that's the statutory language is LOCC. In Lansing, it's EOCC. The first time that the EOCC would establish what that base salary and per diem would be cannot be rejected by the city council. In future years, it could be, but again, it's to try to make sure that we don't have sticking with the current compensation model. And again, a lot of this is up for you to discuss, debate. Just a quick note on why we landed on 130 meetings per year. Ingham County's Board of Commissioners has a limit of 80 meetings per year, which in looking at, and there's some information provided in your packet about how many meetings council members are assigned to for standing committees and things. If you consider there is a charter minimum 26 meetings per year that they have to attend, plus it's usually 26 committee of the whole meetings, that's actually that day. So that would only be that's one per diem. So only one for that. But considering all of the other meetings that they may have to attend on multiple times per month, we did not think 80 was enough. 130 may be too much, but it seemed to be, given the range of amount of meetings that council members can be assigned to have to attend. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility, but certainly up for you to debate. I think it may make sense to have some sort of upper limit to how much money goes into, or a potential of total per diem per year, just for budgeting purposes, so they can kind of, again, for developing the budget, how much reasonably or max amount do they have to set aside for a budget for that sort of personnel type thing. But again, this is kind of what we developed for you to review, consider, and let us know if you want any changes.
Thank you, appreciate that. So everybody's on the same page. It's page 3 in the letter correspondence that was sent to us. 3 and 4 are the actual proposed changes to that section 2-104. Questions? Commissioner Kui.
One of the questions I had was the commission. How is the commission made up? And then who votes on the commission?
So that's established by charter, and that is, I don't remember now. They are appointed, and
It's right at the end of 4.
it's required by the Home Rule Cities Act as to how they're appointed. And then ultimately, they make that decision and it's sent to the city council. Again, that's all required by the Home Rule Cities Act, and if I could find that, I can get that information for you once I find it in the Home Rule Cities Act too.
Do we have an ordinance?
There is an ordinance, yeah. Let me see if I can find that. I have that copied.
I think.
Yeah, so it's Chapter 280 ordinance for the city of Lansing. And let's see. Members are 7 members who are registered electors of the city. They are appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by a majority of the members elected and serving in council. So that is who serves on the EOCC.
Thank you. And Vice,
Go ahead.
go ahead, continue. No. Good.
Sorry about that. The other question I had, and again, in just listening to the council members that have came and spoke to us, if we're going to go base this on a per diem per cap of how many meetings, we should have in there somewhere, and I'm looking at your point 3, or maybe before that all city council members must be assigned to the same number or close to the same number of departments or meetings that they sit on. So if I'm correct, they are, right now, the president delegates what committees they sit on. So if all of them are not sitting on the same number of committees, how can they come to the same number of meetings? So it should have language in there to make that equitable across the board for every city council member, if we're going to put that in the language in there.
So
that could hinder someone of how many meetings because they're not assigned to that.
Sure, and I think that plays into the total amount of meetings to attend per year, that cap, and what is that cap. We did not specify the assignments because that tends to be more of a function of just the operation of the council itself, but that this may be sort of a self-correcting feature in that if I'm not going to get paid if I'm not going to get paid to sit on all these boards, why am I going to? The other thing to keep in mind is not all boards are created equal in terms of the number of meetings. Some have to meet, some meet twice a month, some meet only when they're called. So, yeah, I think that is a concern of how you deal with that. We did not address that there, and so I guess if there's desire to look at maybe adding some language about some more sort of equitable assignments, again, that's usually a function of what goes into the bylaws of the council, but we can look at some language, maybe not in the compensation section, but in a different section of Article 2. But then again, just remember that not all of those committee assignments have the same number of meetings that have to be attended.
But again, you just saying that to me just confirms that we should have language in there to specify that. Because again, just because I am assigned a committee that doesn't meet as much as someone else, I'm being harmed if I'm a council member. So we should have, again, for me to vote on it or even look at that, we have to have some kind of language to delegate that.
Yes, this has always been my concern because looking at the standing committees as of 2025, they are not distributed equitably. So if I'm only being assigned one committee, it doesn't matter how many times we, I have one committee and someone else has 4 committees. Now, the president, of course, of the council, he's an ex officio of all meetings. So do you get paid more because you're attending 4 more meetings than I am, and I only have one assignment? So there should be language in the charter dictating or in the council rules saying that it has to be distributed equitably. If you look at the assignments right now, they by far are not.
Yep. Commissioner Bauer?
And I think all of this discussion, I don't mean confirms my position, which I think I'm not comfortable with a per diem system like this. I think we leave it as it is. I think it's complicated. I think to administer it would be a nightmare for somebody to be keeping track of who's coming and going and payroll. Compensation is tied to who the president appoints to committees. I mean, so that is arbitrary. And I think it's difficult to measure the value and worth of a council person based on just going to meetings. People do things outside of the job. People do share their talents and skills in different ways. I also think we're doing all this to deal with a problem that comes up from time to time with maybe council people who don't do their job. I'd rather see us come up with a way to address that. And the council could address that right now, aren't I correct? I mean, couldn't the city council, I mean, they seem to be very concerned that people aren't going to things, that people aren't carrying their weight. If that's the case, they can now do something about that. So, I know we're trying to make this more equitable and fair, but I just think it's very, very, very difficult, and I think we should just leave it as is.
I have Commissioner Dowd and then Commissioner Boyd.
I wanted to just call out one of the parts in here that talks about the single per diem per day. So if we have committee of the whole followed by council, if I've attended a committee of the whole and I'm not making money to be at council, then I'm good to go, right? So I've already attended one meeting for the day. I have no financial obligation well, I'm just saying that leaves that open to say, I'm only getting paid for one meeting today, that's all I'm attending. So I think the way this is written doesn't necessarily solve the problem of this. I'm with you, Commissioner Bauer, that maybe this is more complicated or we need to really spend some more time. I don't know that I don't feel even comfortable to vote on this tonight. I think this needs to take some more work.
Well, I agree. Other?
I just wanted to compliment the attorney for great work and a lot of work, but I do not support a per diem, and I will vote against it. Thank you.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, when you look at it, it's very convoluted. And who in the city council would keep track of all of this? So I tend to agree with Commissioner Bauer that I think the council, we need to put some language on the charter where the council can take action on these kinds of things if possible. I don't know. But city council can do things that they've chosen not to do previously, but they can, and if we can put something there that would move them to act, on certain circumstances, that may be the better deal than having to go through all this, data collection and payment and non-payment and then, all that stuff. So I tend to agree with Commissioner Bauer on this issue.
Other Councilmember Washington.
I don't have a thought either way at this point, but Lori, thank you for the work you put into it too. Also, I appreciate that because I kind of tend to agree there should be a financial thing. You have to understand, you can't have council people going after council people like that. They are all individually elected officials. Nobody has power over anybody else. My concern with this is, because I'm not against per diem, But let's not forget, several areas are already doing it. The county is doing it. Other cities are doing it. So it's not some big, huge thing. There's an office manager that takes attendance. She knows who's at every meeting because she's here. My concern is multiple meetings in one day, because you could have a public service, or you could have a planning committee meeting before the committee of the whole, and then you have the council meeting. I think that's the thing that needs to be flushed out. But I'm not against per diem, and so many places are already doing it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Other comments? No? So what is, in terms of moving forward with this, do we still want to consider this, Commissioner Anderson?
I would like to still consider it, but I don't think that we should make any decisions this evening. I think that
No,
we should, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think.
Yeah.
So do you, I guess what I'm saying is, there's been a bunch of questions asked about this. Do we want to get answers, or are we at a point where we don't want to pursue per diem payments?
I'm still pursuing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Commissioner Dow.
With that, one other question.
Yep.
Because we didn't touch about the 25% or the number of meetings, and I think that would be helpful for you to have a little bit of dialogue around that, to think about that. And so I will just start that by saying, if you calculate out the 130 meetings per year, that's approximately 10 to 11 meetings per month. My friend to my right here, who has served before, I asked if that's about right. 8 to 10 would be approximately like a fair amount per month. Understanding that some positions, depending on the board or commission they sit on, or what their assignment is, may have more. So I think that that makes sense. Excluding probably the president, I think there's probably an expectation that position may end up with more than that. The other part then, for the 25%, I think that's a fair number to start with. I agree with you that the language here would allow for there to be a ceiling, and then you work down from that. So your base level is 25% less than your max compensation, and the rest of it is made up of 130 parts of that 25% or what have you. I'm comfortable with the 25%. I think that's a good number.
Other comments?
I'm also comfortable with that, but I know you made a comment, Commissioner Boyd, about, if you have a meeting of the whole and then you have a regular city council meeting, what is my incentive? Your incentive, it would be that you were elected to do a job. So when you're elected to a job, you attend the meetings necessary to do your job. It's not like a if or and or why should I, but I know that in my job, I would have to attend meetings because it's part of my job, so.
Commissioner Coy.
Again, I just brought up more reasoning in my aspect that every council member has adequate time to at least to meet those maximum amount of meetings. So every person that serves are able, not saying they will attend, but at least able to make 130 meetings. If that is what the threshold that we're going to be at. Now, I'm not saying they're going to make all of them, but it has to be equitable across that.
In that regard, if I could just say something, in that regard, you may want to reach out to the county and ask them. I think when I was out there as a county commissioner, you were limited to a certain number of committee assignments, not what the committee was, but each commissioner had 2 assignments or something like that. And so if you could check with the county, there may be some language that they have in place that kind of regulates that gets to that, equity issue. Commissioner Washington.
And Chairman Jeffries, I'm wondering, I'm in my own head right now, is that language more appropriate in the charter or the council rules?
Well, if it's in the charter, it's going to be there forever. If
That's
it's in
what
the
I'm
rules,
wondering.
you can.
But we don't know. I mean, committees come and go.
Exactly.
And that's the problem.
Exactly.
That's why I'm wondering about
Yep.
maybe if it's better in the rules. If we put equity in the charter, but we leave the minutia into the council rules.
I've seen in other charters where they've actually, spelled out what the standing committees are, or at least the limitation. And if you're going to add one, you've got to take one away. I think the state of Michigan does that. They have, only, 20 departments, and they can't go above that or something like that. And if they do, they have to eliminate one department, and then you can bring in another one. That's why you see all the names keep changing. That's what they're doing. I mean, that's something we could look at.
Right, and this is just for discussion, because I know there was a president of council who combined two committees. So,
Yep.
and thank God another one wasn't added. So I just think it's something that you have to think about when you're talking about that. Thanks.
Yep, and I think also in the language on point 3, it talks about boards, but City of Lansing's a bit unique with their appointments to outside of City Council on boards and commissions. That should be looked at as well, and in terms of the equity of those appointments too, need to be pulled in and looked at. So just one question. When I was on City Council, Committee of the Whole was like on a Thursday. Yeah, so is it on every Monday night now or every other Monday when council meets? Go ahead.
That was changed while I was on council, because we had a council person, and we used to meet every week also, I know you remember, but we had a council member that didn't want to show up every week, so
Okay, so it went to
they changed it.
Okay.
So it would go to that.
All right.
But, yeah.
Good to know. All right, anybody else have any questions? Kristen, do you need anything from us?
Do you want to see language, removing the language about limiting it to 1 per diem per day? I mean, that's what's in the county, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I think it should be 1.
I guess per diem is literally 1 per day, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's legalese, right? Okay, is there any other questions? Commissioner Lopez?
Clarification. So we've gone through this. We haven't said that we're going to approve this.
Correct.
So are we moving to not doing this and just,
I think we've given sufficient direction to Kristen. She's going to go back, kind of put together some new language that would reflect what the concerns were that we've expressed and bring
so
it back to the next
we're still
meeting.
talking about per diem?
Mhm.
All right, well, I don't know. We'll see what.
I think I know
do
where you
next.
are. Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, moving on. We have the next, if I can get it, to it. Another correspondence dated February 14th. This is taking us back to Article 4 and reviewing some of the stuff that we did at our last meeting and coming back with some recommendations. It primarily deals with 4.-102. So Kristen, do you want to go through that, please?
This starts on page 56 of your packet. Now, some of the language, there had been some language that had been at least provisionally approved in talking at the last meeting, but you had asked for some additional language to at least be presented for consideration and discussion to kind of flesh out perhaps more debate and more development of language. And the first one is in section 4-102.5. So there was already a motion to change the due date for the annual report to March 1st, but there had been a request to add, as a requirement of the contents of the annual report, some language about transparency efforts. And so what we did was we added an additional sentence just to the bottom of that for your consideration and discussion to see if this is something that meets your approval or if you want additional discussion. So just at the very bottom of, and remember, these were all renumbered, so it gets a little confusing when we talk about, so it's currently renumbered to 0.5, but if you're looking at a copy of current language, it's 0.4. But regarding an annual report, it would require a new sentence. The report shall also outline and provide analysis of the transparency efforts of the agency of the executive branch.
Is there a discussion on that? Commissioner Anderson?
I believe Clerk Swope indicated that he was maybe going to get a copy of the report that's been submitted to City Council. Is that in our packet?
I think he sent them.
Oh, okay.
He sent them to us during this meeting.
They're on the website, the
Yeah.
annual reports,
They're very extensive.
and I think that's what you sent the link to.
Okay.
So it's right, those extensive reports for the last 5 years are on the web.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments about the additional language that's being proposed, about the transparency? Commissioner Dowd.
So I think it makes sense. I think it's great to have it there. I think this is also going to be the interpretation of whoever is doing that report at the time. It's not a very clear expectation outside of just providing an analysis of the transparency efforts. But do we list out what the transparency efforts need to be anywhere else? Like, that's my concern. So it's great to have it, but I still don't know that this is going to give us any detail that we're looking for in the report from the mayor.
So you don't want to.
It's great verbiage. I just don't know that it has any, it's not going to produce anything different. I mean, other than saying, yes, we can say that we've been transparent in our efforts in these ways, but it's not going to show us transparency because nobody wants to put transparency in anything that looks negative in their annual report. That's just my thoughts. I just don't know how this is really going to do anything for us.
What would you recommend in terms of change?
Either there's more detail of what that means for transparency efforts, or we don't put it in.
Okay, Commissioner Washington.
Commissioner Dowd, I think the report shall outline and provide analysis of the transparency efforts. I think what we're saying is they want a full analysis, which I think would dig deeper into that. I think that word is very critical.
Commissioner Boyd.
I agree with it, with Commissioner Dowd. I don't think this language really gets it. And I also don't understand why we would put that, anything similar to it in that language, in that section. I mean, if the mayor is doing a state of the city, he's doing a state of the city, that to me is transparent. I mean, he's basically laying out what he thinks the state of the city is. And I don't understand why we would feel that in that report, he or she has to provide a statement or an outline on transparency. It seems redundant to me.
Commissioner Anderson.
I just have to completely disagree. As someone who's worked for a quasi-government organization, who's been, I guess, involved in city government in some capacity, and I just, for every state of the city I've been to, which I feel like is separate than this report, as two different things, but I just feel like if we're talking about the event, which is not what we should be talking about, the event is very cushy. There's no, right. So I think that, and I haven't reviewed all, looks like 100 pages of this annual report to say whether I think that it's transparent or not. But I don't think that it's redundant at all. And I think it's in an effort to ensure that this office is being transparent. Regardless who's there, regardless of what they choose to put in this report based off of the requirements outlined here, it like adds the additional step of ensuring that they're doing an analysis on their transparency efforts, which I feel like is separate than just saying, oh, we're being transparent in this report.
Well, I agree with you on the separation. I mean, if we want to require the city, the mayor, he or she, to put out a statement on transparency and what they're doing to be transparent, then that's fine. I don't think it belongs in the state of the city. I don't understand.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, we talked about having a some sort of glossary of terms on this. So I think there are some terms that need to be clarified. For example, transparency. What is transparency? And what are the items or things that would, cause something to be transparent in a report from any department? So I guess definitions is what I was looking for.
So
Definition
you're
of
looking
terms.
for a transparency definition that would fit in to the definition section of the charter?
Yeah, some definition of terms. Because this way they would come back and say, well, this doesn't fit the transparency as noted in the charter.
Okay. Other questions? Kristen, can you do some definition work, or?
No, not until you tell me what you mean by transparency, because that is a policy determination that I don't want to put my personal biases or my firm's personal biases on. So y'all need to give me some guidance on what you want. And here is great, via email is great, but I want to make sure that
That's a
it's you guys. Yeah.
Only kidding.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's
So
what I'm getting to is like that whole,
Yeah.
that's going to determine person by person.
Yeah. So, Commissioner Anderson, would you have any language that would satisfy you?
Not immediately, but I could definitely draft something and send it
Would you
over.
please?
Yeah.
And send it over?
Mhm.
That'd be great.
By this Thursday, correct? Whenever.
Yeah, if you could, I mean, as soon as we get it, we'll ship it out.
Okay.
And have it ready for the next meeting.
Just as a bit of a spoiler alert as well, too, we've been asked to work on development of some proposed language about a transparency officer. So I think this is like a first part of a broader concept. So, this part may not be decided until some other things are decided, but that's, I think, a broader picture.
Well, moving on.
Okay, so this should be an easier one. Section 4-102.9, which is currently 8, there's a provision within the current charter stating that the mayor is to prepare or have prepared an annual real property report. The question was, does this need to be a separate thing? Are they doing this? Does this need to be in the charter? I know the clerk did some research on this, that I believe it was my understanding that an annual property report hasn't been done since like the 70s. If this is not something that you think is mission critical that has to be in the charter, you can just strike the whole provision. Or you can look at having some sort of reporting in the annual report about property, if that is what you think is appropriate. But, I mean, if this is not something that's a mandatory charter requirement, so you could strike it if you think that it no longer is something that needs to be done for the city.
Any comments? I guess my comment would be, I think it's necessary. And I can recall, I think it's when I first came onto council, there was a discussion about a certain piece of property that, was it a parks property or not? And they were trying to sell it, and so did it have to go before the people, or could they just sell it? And I think creating a document that's updated every year can help us keep track of those properties. We've now identified all of the park property. I get that, but I think, in terms of all of the assets that we have, and is this just real yeah, it's just real property. So it's not personal property. So I think it'd be a little easier to do. Does this include, are we talking about easements, and is that everything that we?
Well, I mean, the definition of interest in real property, you read that broadly enough, I would say yes.
Oh.
So it could, yeah. And honestly, it's not necessarily a bad thing to keep a running tally of that, because having worked in a city attorney's office, it can, having to go down to the archives and spend a couple days in the county clerk's office trying to track down deeds is a little difficult. And I just wanted to point out, I think the request was, if this stays in the charter, some language about this thing has to be done and give some deadlines. So the proposed deadline, if you want to keep it in, is that the report shall be presented to the city council no later than the last regular city council meeting of each year. You can certainly consider it to be, something annual. If you still think it's important, maybe not annually, maybe it's, I don't know, once a term or once every other year. But that's something for you all to consider.
Commissioner Washington.
I agree. I think this needs to stay in. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. And when I was on council, I actually asked for a report of this, and it was just totally ignored. So, yeah. So I think it's critical.
And Vice Chair.
To Attorney Rewell, my concern is this. Obviously, things have not been done. in a lot of sections that we're going through. Where are we inserting the language, this is the penalty, this will occur if this does not happen? Where's the enforcement language? That's what I would like to see.
So generally speaking, a violation of the charter is a misdemeanor. There's also certain
get that.
provisions. We have provisions about forfeiture of office and having that process, which, I mean, if you're talking about the mayor, you could have that process. I think it may be a little overkill, but I don't know. In terms of whether it's someone who is an employee, you could look at putting provisions about, sending reference for certain level of employment discipline, although there's a limitation in the charter about the council not serving as an administrative oversight of employees. I mean, the other option you could consider, which I think creates its own issues, is you could even create some ability for some of these things to look at having the ability to enforce through court like a mandamus action. So this thing's required, it wasn't done, I command it be done. Not to say that in all circumstances it would be something that could be filed in court, but that's certainly one thing that is, I have seen in other charters.
I like that.
Other questions? So in terms of the amendment, adding the report shall be presented to City Council no later than the last regular City Council meeting of the year. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
It's been moved and supported. Any other debate? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It is amended.
The next section is 4-102, currently .9, proposed .10 with the reordering regarding unlawful discrimination. We were asked to develop language that allows for some permissive language, particularly about sort of the second half of the sentence. So currently it reads, "The mayor shall be responsible for reducing any unlawful discrimination and increasing mutual understanding among the residents of the community." And I think the concern was, how do you enforce or shall a requirement of increasing mutual understanding among the residents of the community, and something about resolving disputes among residents of the community. In review of the ordinances, there are several anti-discrimination ordinances that the city of Lansing has, which would be enforced by the mayor. So the proposed language we developed kept the shall language. So you're still, as the mayor, responsible for enforcing these ordinances that the council enacts for anti-discrimination. So change that to, the mayor shall be responsible for enforcing anti-discrimination ordinances, and then adding the more sort of mutual understanding, sort of aspirational language of, the mayor may also develop programs and initiatives that resolve disputes and foster mutual understanding among the residents of the community. Again, this is for your just review, discussion, modification.
And Vice Chair.
How would the mayor go about enforcing anti-discrimination as far as, because there's discrimination claims against the mayor's office. So what is he doing, or what has he done to enforce it, and how does he do that and keep track of that? What is there, like a database, which there's not, I know, I'm just talking out loud, but I'm concerned that the mayor shall do this. And maybe that's what would fall under the transparency officer, but I'm very concerned about that language because I don't think it's been enforced, and I just don't understand the mayor, the person themselves can do this. You could wish for that, but if you're being accused of discrimination, are you going to enforce something against yourself?
Sure, and so I think that comes down to, and that may be something that has to be specific to the specific instance of what we're talking about, but looking more broadly at, generally speaking, the chief executive officer of a city, whoever that is usually the person that is tasked with enforcing the ordinances. And so whether that's the manager or the mayor, because they sort of oversee the police department, or they oversee building code, or they oversee the Office of Equity Inclusion, that would be anything from having an ordinance in place about fair housing and making sure you have it staffed to receive and handle complaints, whether you agree with the outcome or not. That's sort of the I think idea behind what I believe the current language says, but then also the proposed language is proposing.
Yeah, well, the city, obviously the mayor is the CFO, but there are departments, for example, the city has a human relations ordinance, which spells out, a process for addressing discriminatory practices and unlawful discrimination. So, and also there are department, specifically that department, I believe, if it hasn't changed, that also is charged with enforcing the Elliott Larson Act to a degree they can, or using that as a guide. And there are other Title I, Title VI, anti-discrimination state acts. So at this point in time, they're housed in that office, I believe. But if not, there are ordinances that address this. I don't know if the council reviews those ordinances on an ongoing basis, but that particular ordinance replaced Richard D. Lett's human rights ordinance. So.
Okay, other comments? Is there a motion to approve this language? It's been moved. Is there support?
Second.
It's been moved and supported. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none on the language, all those.
Easy
I'm
question.
sorry. Commissioner Kui?
I guess a point of clarification, were we still asking for a more defined approach on that enforcement part before we agree to accepting this?
Pardon me?
No, I was thinking out loud.
Okay.
We'll flush that out later.
So you're talking about enforcement again?
Yeah.
Right. Is before we take a proposal to a vote on this, should we have more in-depth on that enforcement part? Or are we just going to put that somewhere else? Again, we've talked about it multiple times.
I think we've talked about enforcement generally, and I think, didn't we have a provision? I thought we put something in.
I know we asked about it. I don't remember seeing anything.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, actually. I can't remember what it was, though. Do you have a? Okay. What was the amendment? What did we do to that? I don't have that in front of me. No amendments there? I know there was an amendment. It's going to require a little bit of work. Do you want to come back to it then next week or in 2 weeks? Okay, we'll hold for.
I have a question about that. If the language is gonna be for the, whole accountability language is in a separate piece, could we do that as one? Let's make that more robust in that section, and then it would enforce everything else. So we could move on to this, because we're not gonna put an enforcement under each section here, right? But if we are committed to going back to the enforcement area and talking through that and making that more robust, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any other discussion or debate? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It is adopted.
All right. Section 4-102.11, which is currently .10, about an affirmative action annual report. As previously noted, Michigan Constitution currently has a provision that prohibits affirmative action. So we recommended modifying this language. Either if this report you feel no longer necessary, the entire provision could be stricken, or if this is something that still needs to remain in place, modifying the language, and we do have some proposed language, that the mayor shall make an annual report on the status of initiatives and programs of the city that promote opportunity and inclusion, Such report shall include information concerning the demographics of city officers and employees, comma, including promotions, comma, hiring, comma, and turnover. Again, this is for your discussion in terms of what all needs to be included. The current affirmative action provision doesn't specify affirmative action specific to what program. A lot of times when cities did have affirmative action policies and programs, they looked obviously at city employees, but they would also look at other initiatives within the city like contracting and things like that. So again, it depends on how broad of a language you would want if you want to keep this language in.
Any discussion on this language? Commissioner Dow.
Can you speak to, since that affirmative action language has been removed statewide, are you seeing some sort of language as you're proposing here in other charters now, or are people removing? Like, what are you seeing the standard is, if standard is a thing?
I don't know that there is a standard. Without having done specifically looking for affirmative action, a lot of charters simply just don't have that language in there because many of them sort of predate the affirmative action sort of concept. So, you know, that's not in there. But to the extent that you are setting forward, you know, policy determinations and what are sort of philosophically important to you, if concepts of, you know, opportunity or inclusion or whatever is important to you such that you believe there needs to be an annual report, that's certainly something within your prerogative to include in here. One thing I will note too, to the extent you think you need to have a deadline in here, I did not develop a deadline language, so if you want to keep that, you may want to consider something like what we did for the property annual report, like just a thought.
Well, as to the deadline, do we want to put one in there? Do we want to be consistent with the end of the year then? Okay. All right. I guess then the motion would be, if we want to move forward with this, would be to adopt the language as proposed with the addition that, additional sentence that the report shall be presented to City Council no later than the last regular City Council meeting of each year.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Commissioner Lopez.
Come on. Okay. It says city officers and employees, including promotions, hiring, and turnover. Does this also include the executive staff?
I'm not.
City employees in general, all of them, top
Yeah.
to bottom?
I mean, the city officer is broadly defined, so it would include department heads, and then employees are, you know, employees. So it would be that broad.
Well, therefore, they're in the mayor's office or some other place as contract employees as well?
I suppose to the extent, I guess your question you can be an employee and have a contract. I think the issue is whether you're an independent contractor or an employee that's working under a contract. Is that, I mean, are you asking like people that are issued 1099s or people that you have an employment contract for a year and here's your salary? I just want clarification.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, are those included as employees or?
Yeah, I mean, so let's say, for example, you have some official that is brought on under a written employment contract, that would be included. I suppose someone could argue that a 1099 independent contractor is not specified in this particular language. That's not to state that it couldn't be included either in part of the reporting or further ordinance on development of this or in additional language in this section.
I just want to make sure that all employees or people that are receiving a salary from the city are included in some way, shape, or form.
Does that need to be added then? Is that what we're talking about? I mean, is it inclusive or does it need to be of what
I suppose to the extent that there is someone on a 1099 that it does not fall within the definition of an officer, they may fall outside. And I don't know who that would be, but it's possible you could have someone, you know, maybe someone that works for a certain amount of time that doesn't quite meet an employment level. We could add something more about contracts, but that could be even broader than
Yeah.
just employees.
Yep.
So.
Well, what is the will of the body? You like it the way that it? Okay, so you're good to go as is with the additional, the other stuff? Are you okay with that?
So they're gonna bring more definition too, though, after this vote?
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, okay, so I asked the question, and they're gonna look for some definition of other types of employees.
Okay,
So will that be added to this motion, whatever is brought back?
what I would do is then I would hold it off in terms of making this, I mean, unless you want to go back next week and we can amend the amendment. Do you want to do it all at once, or do you want to piecemeal it, is I guess what I'm saying. What does everybody want to do?
Well, it would be fine if they brought the information just
Okay.
to include it, you know.
Okay, Commissioner Dowd?
I have one other question. If we're expanding, I have a little bit of concern about just the general language of collecting information or reporting information of the demographics. So we could get to a point where people don't want to report certain demographics, right? So if we were wanting to have a true picture of this, we almost need to spell out, at minimum, these things must be presented. If we're trying to really hit, like if we're trying to hold our administration accountable for equity throughout the hiring process and that, I think we have to spell out at bare minimum what that report should include. Because demographics could mean a lot of things.
Madam? No, I'm sensing here there's a lot more questions than answers, so let's put this off for a vote until our next meeting.
People want more language, so they send it in by Thursday?
That'd be great. Please.
By, not this Thursday, next.
If we could even get it by this Thursday so we can get it out to Kristen, that would be
So
great.
if you had the demographics or you had the employee statuses, it sounds like you're worried about an independent contractor who is, if you're trying to capture that, I assume that's what you need? You need policy. There sounds like there's policies pieces that are missing, so we need it in writing so that the attorney can look at to see if it's legal or not, because there's probably some demographic questions that people may not have to share by law.
Right.
And there's some information that you don't, what do you think the body may care about or not? So, just to help move it along.
All right, next one.
This one, admittedly, I punted a bit because I need more direction from you. There was dissatisfaction with this provision about the mayor shall receive, investigate, and respond to all requests for information and all complaints concerning the operation of city government in a prompt and efficient manner. And the questions presented at the last meeting was, what is the scope of this provision? Should there be a deadline in the section? And how can commission ensure compliance with this provision? Now, I think 3 can be answered by a broader, this language you want for more broader enforcement, so we can come back with that. We do not recommend that a deadline should be provided in this section, given our answer to 1 is that this is a very broad provision in here. It doesn't seem to be a terribly common provision in city charters. And again, this can run the gamut of providing response to a request for information or sort of receiving and responding to complaints. And a request for investigation and a request for information can be as simple as, having a 311 department to respond to quick calls, to responding to a FOIA, to responding to, something else. So, and then the complaints can run the gambit as well. So this one, I think, is a bit of a difficult nut to crack in terms of what more would the commission want out of this, if anything, to be able to provide us some more guidance to develop language on this? And if this is something you want to like noodle over and bring back in writing to me to look at for review, I can do that too.
Well, I think as to the compliance piece, I think that we're working on a general one that's going to cover everything. I agree on the deadline issue. But does anybody have anything specific? Commissioner Kui.
I think the language that was after this that we deleted, some of that provision as far as joining and merging departments should have been put in that part. That would further discussed some of those provisions. And I do believe we eliminated it at our last meeting.
You're talking about the reorganizational plan?
Right, so I thought some of that should have been put inside of that to give some direction of what he has aboard as far as that. I said that after we already had took the vote.
Okay. So what would you?
I can propose something.
Okay.
And I'll write it up and send it to her.
Okay.
Because I think that kind of alleviates how broad we were talking about it. Again, it's going to cover the gamut of the city, but again, that was examples, more of a structure of where that was going.
Okay. All right, we'll look for some language from you, Commissioner Washington.
I wasn't here for that discussion, but frankly, going through this, I don't even see the need for the whole thing. We have FOIA laws in place. We have everything in place for investigation of discrimination and other things. I guess I'm not wondering what the purpose of this is.
Anyone want to respond? Commissioner Dow?
I think what we talked about is, so the next language does state that the mayor may delegate any of the duties described in these sections to another officer or department. Basically, it's holding him accountable, say there has to be something set in place to respond to these. And if we heard people we talked about this last time, people have come to us and said, we don't get any response when we do this. So now we can hold the mayor accountable for saying the systems you've set in place are not working. So you kind of have a responsibility at the top to assign it to a department or person to handle, and if it's not working, it goes back up top. I think that's.
Commissioner.
I understand that, but I still don't see the point of this. We already have all of that in place. It doesn't have to be in the charter. There are other ways to deal with it, and I don't see the point. I mean, we could end up with a 3,000-page charter if we keep going, but I don't see the point. We have laws in place. We have systems in place. And at the end of the day, the people can hold the mayor accountable and they can get with their council members.
All right, we're still going to get some language coming back? Okay. All right, we'll take this up at our next meeting.
Section 4-102.13, which is currently 112, that is the delegation of duties section. Because there's been a reorganization, at a minimum, the reference sites would at the very least need to be moved to correspond to their original sections. So the point, it would just need to be just 0.5 to 0.6, 0.7 to 0.8 to 10, just as suggested through here. The other, I guess, issue is whether you wanted to add any other provisions specifically allowing for delegation or any other different change. And we could certainly put a pin on this one and wait until there's any other developments you want to do before you come back and decide the delegation provision, unless you just want to make this minor change at this point.
Well, I think at this point, if there's no objection, we'll make the numerical changes just to make sure everything is up to date. And then we can come back and I think as we move through it, there might be some additional questions that we have. If there's no objection, we'll just go ahead and do it. Hearing none, make it so.
All right, next section, organization of departments. First, so this was dealing with sections 4-301. There's really sort of two sections that outline departments. One of them is point 2, which is specific to agencies that are defined or outlined in the charter, and then point 3, which is everything else that's not outlined in the charter but existed at the time. So regarding point 2, the question was, okay, are these departments or agencies, or what are these? And does it matter that we use the words agency or departments? And we kind of provided a legal analysis here. We do think you should keep, upon review and reflection, these are defined, agency is defined in the charter, and it means a board, commission, department, division, or office, or other organization of the city department. And then there's something called an agency of the executive branch, which is a more specific definition of agency. When you look at point 2, these are not, technically speaking, identifying departments, they are identifying agencies, and I think that's important as to what the heck is the Board of Water and Light. Remember, when we're looking at the charter language, when you're looking at headers and it says departments and 3-301 organization of departments, that's merely for convenience. That's not actually statutory language. The statutory language is an agency. And so these A through H are all agencies that are charter defined, and that's why they're kind of held out, especially in the charter. But we did go back and we did amend or recommend amending some of the language here based on your discussion, one of them being D, about law department or office of the city attorney. And what does it matter between law department or office of the city attorney? Broadly speaking, whether you call it an office or a department, I think you don't want the tail wagging the dog. You have to really look at how that position and how that office or department is set up. But office typically is someone that has, when we're speaking generally about government, an entity that has its own independent, usually elected office, like a sheriff's office. In the instance of the city charter, it's the clerk's office, it's the office of the mayor. That being said, because the city attorney is responding both to the city council and to the mayor, it's not strictly speaking a department within the mayor's office. So going with the language they use now, we did put in city attorney's office, or office of the city attorney. And then consistent with the current language that is being used for the planning department, on F, it's economic and planning department. And that was really the only change to that.
Kristen, I had a question with regards to the agency and agency of executive branch. That, I've read that a number of times, and it's very confusing. If you say, while department is not itself defined, the term is used throughout Article 4 and elsewhere in the charter in a manner that appears to be specific to and synonymous with agency of the executive branch. Should we take department out of agency? Just eliminate it then, or is it still necessary to be part of that definition?
I think I would leave it broad, just because generally speaking, if you're using the term agency, a department is still an instrumentality of the city, and agency, if you look at all of these, are still instrumentalities of the city. So I think you want agency to be broad. So it's every department is an agency, but not all agencies are department. So it might be being a little pedantic, but I think you want to leave agency and department as they are.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Sorry, go ahead, Madam Vice Chair.
Quick corrections, it should say economic development and planning department.
Yep. That's in F.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it should say economic development and planning department. Sorry about that. So that you can hear me.
Okay, so under the first proposed amendment, would be in D, changing it from the law department to the office of city attorney. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concern? Is there a motion to accept? It's been moved and supported. supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That amendment passes. And then for F, it would read Economic Development and then Planning Department. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there support? Support. Moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it passes. Finance Department.
All right, so then the last thing discussed was 4-302 Finance Department, which currently reads that the Department of Finance shall be in charge of the divisions of accounting, assessment, budget management, income tax, and treasury. But in reviewing the current org chart, it appears that they are not, that's not what it is. It's more of a coordination. So we propose some language to remove the be in charge of to coordinate with. And again, open to suggested changes, but just some language to convey that they're working together, not necessarily overseeing these other money-related divisions or instrumentalities of the city.
Is there any questions, comments? All right, I'm sorry, Commissioner Washington. Yeah.
So I'm thinking because the Department of Finance shall coordinate with the divisions, it sounds to me like these are still under the Department of Finance.
Yeah.
Divisions of what?
It'd be divisions within the agency of the executive. I mean, there's still, whether you call them departments or agencies or divisions, because division is another term used in the charter. These are all money-related entities, so.
But they're all separate, apart from Department of Finance? I wouldn't support this, but thank you.
I think in the city, or in the table of organization, they have accounting under finance operations. And are we calling finance operations, that's finance department? I don't know.
They are
Yeah.
actually. Well, according to a website, under the finance department is financial transparency, accounts payable, purchasing, pension, retiree healthcare reports.
So,
They would have to work in conjunction.
no, I'm trying to understand what's the concern?
I'm sorry, I don't think we just need a ton of departments. You can have a department and have divisions under that department, instead of having all these departments that then you have to pay a department head and a deputy department head. And, I just think it makes more sense because they are all finance. I know where I work, we don't have separate departments for every little thing. We have a department and the others come up under it. I think it's a waste of money, and I think it's a way to build empires, and I just frankly won't support it.
All right, so looking at 4-301.2, which is listing these departments, are you saying you want to eliminate some of these departments?
I want them to be divisions under the finance department, not their own separate entities.
Well, I'm not, in terms of the way that the table of organization is set up, I think that's been something that's been created in terms of how the mayor wants.
Can I see it?
Yeah.
It's right here. But we're not doing this for this mayor. Where's
Commissioner
finance?
Anderson.
So I guess just for a point of clarification, if we don't change it, if we leave the language as is, does that mean the mayor technically has to reorganize the current departments that exist? Like, what is?
I would suspect he's already done that. Wouldn't you, in terms of this organization?
I mean, if we keep the language in the charter of that the Department of Finance is over accounting, assessments, budget, income tax, treasury, if we leave it as is, does that mean that the mayor is required to restructure his table, or, like, you know what I mean?
Yes, either, if he hasn't done it, he would have to do it. He may have already done it. I mean, we talked at our last meeting about in point 7, which I think is now point 8, about the reorganizational plan. We got rid of point 7 because in another one of these sections, it allowed by ordinance to reorganize. And so I guess we would have to do some research to see how this table of organization came to pass.
Yeah, I mean, I know that at some point they had treasurer was reporting a few years ago to the finance, and then it had been changed around again, and different mayors have moved things around. So I guess the question is, what are enforcement if they don't do whatever is in it? I guess
Kristen,
it's a
do we know
question.
how this all came about in terms of the organization itself?
No.
Are there ordinances in place?
I mean, not in terms of the org chart specifically, but I will know in terms of just charter language, if we flip ahead a little bit to 4-402, heads of agencies, it says the head of an agency or division may also serve as the head of a department.
Okay.
And then going on, it says the head of each agency or division within a department shall be appointed by the department head unless this charter or an ordinance provides for appointment by the mayor. So it does provide that if in the event, I think the general rule with these departments specified in the charter is that there's a department head and that head appoints the heads of divisions unless otherwise specified, which does apply to this section, because if you look at point 4, the mayor shall appoint the treasurer, the assessor, and the chief personnel officer, which under the Home Rule Cities Act, the charter does have to specify specifically how the treasurer and assessor are appointed. So, I mean, that can be part of it, but the historical of why in terms of the org chart, I don't know that.
Okay. Why don't we, yeah, Commissioner Lopez, sorry.
We spoke about this at the last meeting. The mayor can propose changes at any time. So however we put it as in this charter, the mayor can request changes. And we talked about, does the mayor need a council resolution to change the departments or to add departments? I think to add, yes, but to change and reconfigure, because all these departments had been other departments, other configurations before this one. So then the question that I have really is, does the mayor have to come to council with a resolution to amend or reconfigure the departments?
In the current charter, if it's a reorganizational plan, he has to submit it to council for review, and it will go into effect after a certain period of time unless it's disapproved by resolution adopted by 2/3 vote of the city council.
Okay, so
I would assume it's.
So that means that really, whatever we put in the charter, it can be changed by the mayor, really, at any point in time, unless the council disagrees.
Correct.
Generally, they don't.
But
I know, but there was a different part. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I agree with the part that it says Department of Finance shall coordinate with the divisions, because later on, if the mayor comes in and changes the departments, you're still, the finance department and everything that falls under their purview still has to coordinate with the budget, assessments office, accounting, income tax, and treasury. That covers everything, no matter what the mayor, how he reorganizes. Still, they will be working in collaboration and coordination with the finance department.
Finance cannot make the report unless they have this information. That's.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't have a problem with the language that's been proposed. Because like you said, it could change at any time, but you're still covering all your bases, that they're still working with the finance department. Yeah, the mayor could change how the,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and I think if you look at point 5, where it says, to the extent permitted by law, and the city may by ordinance establish, abolish, and reorganize departments other than the fire, police, and board, water, and light. So there's the authority. Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, so I guess and we can look into this later, but I just wanted to clarify, if the way it's currently being done now, was through an ordinance, or was it just changed? Like, you know what I mean? Like, were these changes made out of compliance and then we're just like changing it anyways? Or was there an actual
Something we're gonna
ordinance
have to check.
passed? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And we want to double check too if this is the correct chart, because this was not presented to us by the mayor's office. So we'll get that information out to you. Okay. So, I passed out at the last meeting and then this meeting tonight, an amendment that would, if we start where we left off last week in terms of the law department 4-304, I had an amendment to the law department section. It would be a new section 4-304.7. This language deals with the ability of council to get their own attorney. Again, if we're going to talk about injunctive relief that they may want to bring to enforce something, this would allow them to do it. Currently, council cannot, they can attempt to get their own attorney and get advice, and that's been an issue that's been, ongoing year after year, so much so that the mayor has failed to pay legal bills that the city council has amassed during requesting outside counsel. So what this language does, it says, and so what the current charter provides is that no board or officer shall employ or retain special counsel in any manner relating to the affairs of the city without first securing the approval of such employment or retainer by the city council. The city council shall act only after getting written permission. So there's no real authority given to council to get their own attorney. So basically what this language says, and this comes from the Pontiac City Charter, notwithstanding the above, the council may engage independent legal counsel on a temporary basis where the council is seeking enforcement of a council subpoena or order, suing or being sued by any city agency or officer, or defending against any action or proceeding involving the council's official duty. Further, the council may obtain the opinion or advice of independent legal counsel in any matter pending before it. So this will clarify, that should clarify that. So, Councilmember Bauer, or Commissioner Bauer, sorry.
But the issue still, it comes down to, so if we get two opinions, and the opinion is different for the council versus the mayor's city attorney opinion, which we've seen happen, how is that resolved?
It's going to be how far does council want to go? And you take it up, you can go through the courts.
So this just gives the permission for the city council, which they've done in the past, but then the firm just wasn't paid and nothing happened. So, that's still my only concern is what happens when you get, and then what if all of a sudden the council is having attorney after attorney and the legal bills mount up? Because,
Commissioner Boyd, I get it.
I agree. I think there needs to be some provision in the language that talks about payment, so that if the council hires an outside independent firm, that firm is going to be paid. Secondly, I think there should be some provision in there about, it just refers to the council. And so the question has been, well, what happens if there's two differing opinions? Who prevails? I think that there should be some provision in there about, it should be a unanimous vote of the council to hire an independent law firm. There should be something in there that it's not just one person on the council saying, let's hire a lawyer, and then hoping that the city will pay the lawyer. I don't think that works.
Council,
Majority would be fine.
Commissioner Andrews.
Yeah, I would recommend it a majority as well. I also wonder, when we're talking about paying them, would this come out of city council's budget? Would it come out of the city attorney's budget? Like, where is the money actually being pulled from? And do we determine that in the charter, or are they just determining that as they go?
Not sure.
I think it has to be in the charter.
Those are
because
good
right now
questions.
it's
We have to answer. You want down here? Commissioner Dowd?
Just the proposed language in there to kind of alleviate some of the payment piece, I think, because that's one specific instance, right? But I think language that states this action cannot be blocked by the current administration or other legal counsels. We want to make sure that the action of doing this is not blocked. That would include payment. So I think that you don't want them to dissuade the action from happening, but you also want to ensure that they are allowed to complete the request.
Commissioner Washington?
It does not come out of city council budget. Council doesn't budget for that, but I do believe, if I could be wrong, but I think it comes out of the city attorney budget.
So I guess to legal counsel, if there is an opinion that counsel, their attorneys come up with a certain opinion that is contrary to the opinion of the city attorney regarding the same issue, what's the liability then for not following the city attorney's opinion?
The city attorney is the attorney for the city. As with any client, you are free to accept the advice and act on it, or disregard it and act under your own risk. They don't have to accept that opinion. The city attorney gives the counsel and sort of advises to that, and the city attorney counsels to that, and the council or the mayor can do what they want with that opinion. They can disregard it if they want. We don't advise that usually as attorneys, but that's certainly within the prerogative of the client. So, because everything is there. There's a whole lot of gray, as you all are seeing in law, and not everything is black and white. And just because one person comes to a different conclusion doesn't mean that it's, frivolous or there's ill intent or anything like that. It could be a legitimate disagreement on how the law is applied to the facts.
Well, is counsel going to lose any of its immunity or anything like that for not following advice of the city attorney?
It could affect. This is such a broad hypothetical that I can't really answer that, but acting upon advice of city council is certainly a defense that a public official or a board can make if being sued. It's not the be all end all necessarily, but we've certainly argued that before and made advances in a litigation when the client follows our advice.
My only concern, would we be able to go back and see how the attorney, outside counsel, would be paid, like since it's from Pontiac, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do they pay? I, as a city attorney, if I made an opinion and you didn't agree with my opinion, I would be hesitant to pay you out of my budget, and you went against my advice. Yeah, it's general fund or so. I think that needs to be said where that money would come from.
Okay. Commissioner Boyd?
Commissioner Lopez just brought to my attention, refreshed my memory, that our councilwoman, Trini Pallavino, has submitted a letter to us with a recommendation that the city, that if the council needs legal representation, that there would be a firewall, and that the council be represented by a member of the city attorney's office, but that there would be a firewall. And so you wouldn't have to worry about the payment issue because it'd be one of our attorneys. I just bring that to your attention, and I think we all have that letter.
Commissioner Lopez?
Just to add, the city attorney represents both. And when there's a conflict, either you go out and hire somebody else, or we can put something in the charter that talks about this. Because in essence, the city attorney represents both bodies.
Correct. Correct. That's something with Commissioner Washington?
They're supposed to, at the end of the day, because they are not an elected city attorney. their firing lies strictly in the hands of the mayor. So if you think for 1 minute, if your job depends on what that mayor thinks, you're wrong. I mean, I had an opinion given to me by the city attorney, and then they went and talked to the mayor, and they switched it like that. So it's not like the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General is elected. This is an appointment by the mayor, and frankly, I've been there. You all have been there. You are not equally represented.
Well,
They'll help you with ordinances and stuff, but when it comes to opinions, there is a bias.
Well,
Commissioner
the
Lopez.
fact of the matter is that if it's not in the charter, they don't have to do it anyway. But if it's some language in the charter that would cause them to do it, it's different. Now whether the city attorney is recommended by the mayor, the council either approves or disapproves. Now, does the council have a job to do? I mean, it's, you may laugh, but the point of it is that if the council doesn't do their due diligence in saying this person is not qualified or whatever, that's the council's fault.
Just very quickly, no, it's not the council's fault. You get about 10 minutes to interview the potential attorney, okay? But at the end of the day,
No, I
maybe
disagree.
we elect our city attorney.
Commissioner Bauer.
And this was from what city?
Pontiac.
I'd be interested to know how they have settled. I think that would be an interesting question to ask. If they've certainly had the same situation, I would think, come up, and how did they deal with that?
Okay, we can do that.
If we could ask.
We will check this stuff out and bring that back at our next meeting. Okay? You're welcome. All right, so where do we go from here? Does everybody want to take a break for the evening, or do you want to continue? Oh, that didn't take long.
I think out of respect for the public, they probably want to have public comment.
Oh, yeah, we're going to go through, in terms of the end of we'll conclude our review at this point. There's no new business. Now's the time for public comment.
All right, our first speaker is Loretta Stanaway, followed by Nicholas Zandy.
So before you get to reviewing what you agreed to do last time on the fire department stuff, let me explain to you a little bit about that. The conversations that are going on are nothing concrete, nothing's been decided, it's just conversation at this point. But what we're considering is that 60% of the fire department's runs are what are termed nuisance runs, that frequent flyers, somebody stubbed their toe, it's 3 a.m, they don't have a car, the buses aren't running, so they call for an ER run instead of getting a neighbor or a friend to take them to the ready care or whatever. So that's a number that's consistent across the country. 60% of runs are basically nuisance runs. So in order to get away from occupying our advanced life support rigs, our top paramedics and firefighters from running on those calls when they could be taking care of a cardiac arrest, looking at medical taxis, which would be instead of advanced life support, they would be equivalent to a basic life support vehicle. Might not even look like an ambulance, might look more like a taxi. It would be staffed by EMTs who could then evaluate. If they got to a call and somebody truly needed more advanced support, they could call for 911 to come. But in the interim, those EMTs in a basic vehicle escort those people to the ER, saving time, saving money, saving equipment, saving burnout, saving our staff from being occupied with a significant 1 call when they could be on a significant 3 call. So they could be staffed by either a new level of employees in the fire department, or they could be staffed by a contracted company like, say, MMR. And this could also serve as providing a pipeline into the fire department. because you get these people in, you get them trained, you get them experienced, and then if they want to move on into becoming paramedics or firefighters, you've got a pathway for them to do that. So there are a lot of pluses to this, very few negatives that I've become aware of. Detroit is doing this. There are a lot of other cities that are doing this. It is a saver of equipment and personnel and time and money. So those are all aspects of things that you should be aware of and consider before you ever do things like you did last time and just blankly take a recommendation and vote on it. And then lastly, at the conclusion of last meeting, the chair absolutely should have gavelled a point of order and stopped the final speaker. There is no place for a sitting commissioner, a sitting council member, any elected official to criticize or berate or hold a diatribe or whatever you want to call it against a public speaker who had the bravery and the guts to come up here and say what was on their mind. An action like that took place does nothing but serve to intimidate and prohibit and restrict other people feeling like they can come up here and say what concerns them about the city they live in and support and pay taxes in and elect officials to represent them in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nicholas Zandy, followed by Councilmember Koss.
So, you already know who I am. I am Nicholas Zandy, and you know my opinion on the at-large and the wards. And I'm just gonna be honest about my opinion on this, on the ward to at-large ratio you chose. Now, while I do believe that while I am glad that there was an increase in the number of wards, it was not the number of wards that are actually equitable. And what you've done there is decrease the number of council members for what? Saving money or something? That makes no sense. Why decrease the number of council members? This is basically acting in a fixed mindset that a lot of high school teachers have kept telling you not to do. That is clearly not how you're supposed to act. And one of you said some very disparaging things about council members who had the guts to say, hey, maybe we should have 9 wards. That is, and said, oh, what they've been doing was very disrespectful. That is, ironically enough, disrespectful to them. They've been someone who knows those council members, and I think one of them's in the room right now, that is just downright insulting to their careers in representing the communities. I mean, one of them has done community service throughout this city to make up for some of the bad things they've done. And guess what? The people love them, and they got elected very narrowly against someone who's funded by special interests. Then you've got the other guy who's also a public school teacher who would probably tell you that fixed mindsets are a bad thing and have been dedicated to making sure that every single one of their constituents is represented adequately. And they've told you several times that the number of wards right now is not enough to adequately represent, and they're too big for them to adequately represent them. This is just downright infuriating that I've heard something like that. And so because of that, to combat this, I am considering working on a ballot proposal to increase the number of wards, and I know not a lot of people have talked about this, and nobody's actually talked about this in the audience or on the dais, and that is increase the number of wards from 4 to 8 and have 1 at-large, just so that we can have 9 council members and have 1 at-large to maybe represent the whole city, while everyone else is represented by a ward, so that everyone is more adequately represented. And I have shared you what an 8-ward map would look like. And I will tell you, it is probably one of the better way to represent it than 5 wards to at-large. That is all I'm gonna say, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Next is Ryan Koss, followed by Fred McLaughlin. Oh, you passed? All right. Fred, you're up. And did you get your phone?
I did.
Awesome.
I did.
All right.
Yeah, I learned about going online and typing in "find my phone." It actually goes out and it locates it. And it was here in the building.
Sorry to distract you.
Anyway, so I wanted to make a comment about the naming of the planning department. The planning department, it doesn't seem to me that there's any need to mention economic development. I don't really know why it's been put there. It seems, it strikes me as a kind of pandering. It really is, you know, the people who have the money who want to develop, they know where to go to do it properly. They don't need to be, you know, enticed or, you know, and, you know, coaxed in. I mean, they're going to come in here, they're going to ask for their money. And of course, if they don't get it from you, then they'll leave. So they know how the system works. So I really would appreciate it if you would simply name it the planning department and let them do their job. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. I'd be interested in hearing them. There's some much more important issues that I don't have time to get into right here that have to do with parking and other elements of city planning. But to me, that's the kind of issues that might be discussed here is actual planning itself. I don't have anything against economic development. It just doesn't seem that it really needs to be emphasized. This is not a secret. So, thank you.
That was our last speaker.
I had already made plans for the week of March 11th, so I just wanted to let everyone, I won't be able to be here that week, but I'm sorry to miss it, especially if you're talking about Board of Water and Light.